Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a morning update. Well, it looks like we have some movement as far as the sealed documents in the defamation case go. Now, we know that there were two Jane Does who gave deposition in that case, and those Jane Does were going to be able to communicate with the court about having their name redacted, if they needed their name redacted, if they wanted their name redacted. Well, it looks like that those two Does have missed the deadline. And with them missing the deadline for opposing their names to be redacted, or released, I should say, that means that the next dump of documents should be right around the corner. It should be imminent. So I think that we should really be on the look for a tranche of documents coming our way very soon. And I think that the reason that the Does who gave testimony here aren't worried about their name being redacted is maybe they're going to provide the same testimony at trial. And perhaps that they've come to the point where they're ready to have their names public. I don't know. I don't know why they would miss that deadline. But the situation is that deadline was missed. So these two names will not be redacted in the upcoming tranche of documents that we have dumped in our lap. Now, when will those documents be dumped? I think very soon. When we heard from Preska last time after the last dump, she said that it would be about a month or 2 month process between each dumps, and we find ourselves right in that time period. So I would guess within the next week or so, next 10 days, we will have more of those sealed documents to pour through. So it's a pretty significant development, and I think that moving forward, of course, those documents are going to prove very valuable to, again, tie up some loose ends and provide some context. That's what I've been talking about here on the podcast for quite some time. Context. Very important, especially in a case like this. Everything has to be talked about in context. And I think that when we have more court documents that we can refer to, it helps us build the picture and add another piece to the puzzle. So let's jump into this article from the Miami Herald, heraldmailmedia.com. The headline, two who gave depositions in Jeffrey Epstein case missed deadline for keeping their testimony secret. The authors of this article are Kevin G. Hall and Ben Weider, either way. Sorry, Ben. A deadline has passed without opposition from two parties whose depositions in the bitter lawsuit between disgraced financier, pedophile, Jeffrey Epstein's accused co-conspirator, Ghislaine Maxwell, bipedal serpent, and an Epstein accuser are set to be made public. So, again, this dump is getting ready to happen, right? It's definitely getting ready to happen, and it's going to be soon, in my opinion. With the deadline being missed, that chops a week off as well, because then Ghislaine Maxwell's lawyers would have time to respond and all of that jazz. So it just cuts that off at the knees with these two parties missing the deadline. And it's going to come out, and their names are not going to be redacted. The two non-parties in the now settled civil dispute between Maxwell and accuser Virginia Roberts had until November 5th to oppose the way their names would be redacted, as well as references that might identify them. So again, my working theory here is, and again, just a theory, folks, my opinion, right, is that these girls are going to come out and they are going to testify against Ghislaine Maxwell, and with that being known by them and perhaps the prosecution, well, they're saying to themselves, might as well get out on the record now. We don't want our names redacted. We're coming out anyway. We're going to testify. So, yeah, that's us. Could that possibly be what we're seeing here? I don't know. I guess we're going to have to see and see how this all plays out, right? But in a filing late Tuesday in New York by Roberts' lawyers to U.S. District Judge Loretta Preska, they said no opposition came in against the release of documents as proposed. A 1-week period was to allow Maxwell's lawyers to respond had there been opposition, ending Thursday. Roberts' attorneys would have then have had until November 19th to respond. So that's how we find ourselves with time chopped off, and how I believe and why I believe that these documents are going to be dumped very soon. Instead, it appears the release of more documents is imminent, including those from third parties known in court documents as Doe 1 and Doe 2, who provided testimony in the suit settled in 2017. They asked the judge to keep names and identifying information out of transcripts of depositions that are due to be made public as part of a lawsuit from the Miami Herald. So, again, I think that the only reason that they would miss this deadline is because they're testifying. I don't see any other reason why that they wouldn't want their names to be kept private, right? Unless, of course, they aren't testifying at all and they just don't care that their names are public now, which is quite possible, considering the large outcry against what Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell was up to. Perhaps some of these survivors are starting to feel like they can come forward with their stories. And maybe that's the case. But I think that there is a whole lot more brewing here. I think there's a lot going on behind the scenes right now, and I'm going to go out on a limb here, folks, and say that I believe that more arrests are right around the corner. I think that we're getting to the point where some of these other co-conspirators are going to be brought in, and I don't know how much longer it will be, but I think it's going to be pretty soon. The Maxwell Roberts lawsuit became subject of Records lawsuit after the Herald's Perversion of Justice series brought renewed attention to Epstein and how he escaped federal prosecution in 2008 for sex crimes against minors. In July, Prescott ruled for the Herald in favor of releasing numerous documents. The process began in August, and after a series of appeals, it resulted in the release of an April 2016 deposition by Maxwell, where she was obstructive and failed to answer key questions about herself and Epstein. And again, another reason why I believe that it could be that these two does are testifying is because we have seen the release of this deposition, right? And we know that Ghislaine Maxwell, some of the charges stem from this deposition. So these could be two witnesses for the government. And they know that they're going to be testifying very soon, and perhaps they're just tired of hiding their names, or they feel like now is the time to just step forward. Maxwell was then ordered to sit for another deposition in July 2016 because of a lack of responsiveness. And that deposition is expected to be released by Prescott in the next few weeks. It has been delayed in part in order to give the two does and other non-parties time to make their arguments about what to have redacted from their soon-to-be-released depositions. So it looks like the non-parties have not been too worried about this stuff being released. Obviously, they haven't had their lawyers contact them. They haven't come forward and contact the courts and ask for their names to remain redacted. And it looks like we're going to get a pretty significantly unredacted document. The latest filing Tuesday also noted that numerous non-parties have been contacted about the release of 5 docket items that have been under seal, giving them the chance to oppose having their names released. 7 raised objections before their respective deadlines. Yeah, I bet they did. There's going to be a lot of people in these documents that don't want their names out, right? People who were involved with Epstein in one regard or the other, hanging out as a friend who had a finger pointed at them as an enabler, whatever it may be. You know that there's going to be a lot of people that don't want their name to come out in this in these documents. So these people are definitely going to try and scramble to keep their names out with these objections, right? So that was all part of the unsealing process that Preska put forward. So we knew that the people, the non-parties who were named in the depositions were going to be able to have the chance to have their names redacted if they contacted the court and had good reasoning for it, et cetera, et cetera. And it looks like some of them have, obviously. Robert's lawyers asked Preska to allow all potentially affected non-parties to be notified at once to speed up the process. Maxwell's lawyers have objected at every turn, arguing that the release of deposition materials jeopardizes her defense in criminal proceedings. Yeah, no, it doesn't. Sorry, it does not. Her criminal case is something completely different. We can't just automatically assume that the jury pool is going to be tainted. That's ridiculous. Was the jury pool tainted for Weinstein or for Bill Cosby or Keith Raniere? No, of course not. So that whole entire line was just ridiculous. It was more nonsense from her lawyers to try and, get one of those technicalities going, right? To try and make it so they find themselves that loophole. Has nothing to do with their client's guilt or innocence, obviously. The bipedal serpent Maxwell was arrested July 2nd at a 156-acre estate in New Hampshire on 4 counts of sexual trafficking of a minor for her role in the alleged abuse of 3 girls between 1994 and 1997. She faces a federal trial next summer and had sought to block the release of her 2016 deposition on the grounds that it would prejudice her ability to get a fair trial. The deposition was also used to bring federal perjury charges against Maxwell in her criminal case. And that's where I think that the situation with the 2 does comes into play, right? We know that the perjury charges are there. We know that these 2 does gave testimony in the deposition. And we know that they had the ability to have their names redacted if they so chose. They did not choose to do that. So there has to be a reason for that. And my working theory, obviously, is just a theory. My thoughts on it are that these does are going to provide testimony, and their testimony is going to help sink Ghislaine Maxwell. Considered a flight risk, Maxwell was denied bail and has been held in a federal facility in Brooklyn as she awaits trial. While she has fought to block the release of materials from the 2015 civil lawsuit, her lawyers have tussled with federal prosecutors in the criminal case, arguing that they have been deficient in turning over potential evidence against Maxwell, and that Maxwell's conditions in federal detention have hindered her ability to prepare her defense. Oh yeah, having the computer, having a scale, having all this time with your lawyers, being the second person to get a lawyer visit. Yeah, it's just so rough for you. You have it so bad. Go talk to somebody who's in Rikers Island who's still waiting for a trial after 2 years. Go talk to one of those people. Go talk to Mr. Browder about unjust behavior or being kept in a jail or a prison when you're innocent. Give me that nonsense from Ghislaine Maxwell. Hinder her ability to prepare her defense. I don't care if she was living with her lawyers. There's not enough time on this planet for her to prepare a defense that is going to be tenable. Besides, unless it's a loophole or a technicality, Ghislaine Maxwell has a long future of bologna sandwiches. Summer is gone, winter is coming, and the government has failed good to make good on its promises, her lawyers wrote in one filing. All right, take it easy, Ed Stark, all right? We don't need Eddard Stark telling us that winter is coming. We all understand. Federal prosecutors pushed back on Maxwell's claims that her detention harmed her ability to prepare for her defense, pointing out that she has given up to 13 hours a day to review potential evidence, more time than any other inmate in her Brooklyn facility. More than any other inmate. Why? What makes her so special? Why should Ghislaine Maxwell have more access than Joe Blow? She shouldn't, but she does. She's still benefiting from the 2-tier justice system. You think poor people are getting the same breaks right now? People that got hemmed up and got themselves a overworked public defender, you think they're getting the same treatment, 13 hours with their lawyer? Of course they're not. But yet Ghislaine Maxwell and bitch-ass Basham and the rest of her whack-ass camp have the audacity to act like she's being treated bad? Give me a break. Federal prosecutors push back on Maxwell's claims that her detention harmed her ability to prepare for her defense, pointing out that she is given up to 13 hours a day to review potential evidence, more time than any other inmate in her Brooklyn facility. We had to read that again, twice, so it will sink in. They also said the delay in turning over all of the potential evidence was due to a contractor falling behind in its work of preparing material from electronic devices that were seized from Epstein's homes in New York and the Virgin Islands in connection with Epstein's 2019 arrest on sex charges. So that's why they asked for the extension and were granted it. Obviously, they were having an issue transferring all of the stuff. So they asked for the 2-week extension, and it was granted to them so that they could get all of this information transferred over. Prosecutors wrote that they will be turning over 1.2 million documents from 62 devices they seized from Epstein. They were granted a 2-week extension earlier this week on the delivery of those materials. Now look, I don't have any evidence of this, okay? This is my opinion. And I like to be clear about that when we're talking about this stuff, right? I don't make pretend I'm a journalist. I'm a commentator, okay? My job is to commentate on the news. So what I'm looking at here and my opinion of the situation is that we might see some arrests that coincide with these documents being turned over. Now, the government might not want to show their hand. So what they'll do is the second these documents are all turned over, some of the more critical targets in their investigation might be swooped up very closely to the time of these documents being turned over. Now, there is definitely some rumblings going on behind the scenes. I've heard from several people that there's some stuff going on in the world of the FBI right now, and that there is some smoke here as far as other arrests coming. Now, again, I haven't spoken to anybody that is locked in as far as a source, works for the Department of Justice or anything like that. But I have definitely heard some pretty interesting rumors about what's coming down the pipe pretty soon for these co-conspirators. There is a lot going on behind the scenes, as we all know. Multiple investigations, multiple fronts that they have to defend on, and at any time, one of these sealed indictments can easily be unsealed, and we can have another arrest in this case. And when the next arrest comes, remember, that's going to launch this case into orbit, because now we have a tangible conspiracy on our hands, folks. And that conspiracy is a racketeering crime. That means some RICO charges most assuredly are going to follow, right? Meanwhile, in another closely followed legal matter, self-described muckraker Angela Clemente's records lawsuit against the FBI has advanced in ways that may ultimately prove revealing. Now, we talked about Angela here on the podcast when this all first was breaking about her Freedom of Information Act with the FBI, compiling information about their relationship with Epstein, etc., etc. So this is a nice little update on that they added to this article here. And it looks like the situation for Angela is moving along at a nice clip, and that some of the documents that's going to be turned over to her are going to be pretty revealing. The FBI has sought to limit what it releases to Clemente in her Freedom of Information Act lawsuit, demanding tens of thousands of documents from the agency about its relationship with Epstein. And this is great work. Very, very awesome to see somebody like Angela Clemente here step up to the plate, file a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit, and compile this information and force the FBI to turn it over. Now, of course, the FBI doesn't want to turn shit over, right? They're not transparent. They don't feel like they work for us, folks. They do their own thing. Don't you see the way the FBI operates? It's disgusting. Absolutely disgusting all around, and I'm pretty tired of it. The FBI needs to be completely and utterly washed out, rebuilt, new people. The leadership is just horrible. They work against the American people on a daily basis, not for us. In an October 26 ruling, Judge Trevor McFadden, who sits on the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia, ordered the FBI and Clemente to file a joint status report on their efforts to negotiate what documents will be made public. Importantly, he denied the FBI's request to push the next status hearing to 2 days before Christmas and ordered the two sides to update him on November 23rd. McFadden also ordered the FBI to confer with Clemente and her lawyer on which records sought should be given priority treatment. I love it. I love it. It's great when you have an average citizen like Miss Clemente take on the FBI and hit them with a huge body shot. This should all be public record, public knowledge, transparent. But no, everything's a game. Everything's national security level secrecy. That just means they're trying to protect their friends. That's what we've come to, the conclusion I've come to anyway. Following this case, every time you turn around, somebody in the government, a prosecutor, a politician, this one or that one, is cutting these people a favorable deal in one way or the other. So it's nice to see Judge Trevor McFadden help Angela Clemente give the FBI a nice black eye here. Clemente, a paralegal, sued the FBI in May, seeking to force the agency to release the documents on the grounds that Epstein is now dead, a bit under mysterious circumstances, and citing an overarching public interest in releasing documents. The Justice Department, representing the FBI, is fighting the effort. Oh, that's a big shock, right? Bill Barr's Justice Department fighting the effort? I will not be sad to see this moron ride on out of town, huh? This retread, the Wade Wilson of Department of Justice folk. I'm so tired of it. These people are so stuck in their bureaucracies that there's no way to get rid of them. Did we really need a holdover from the Bush administration, the war criminal Bush administration? That's really what we needed in charge of the Department of Justice as the Attorney General? Straight garbage. And I don't have much hope for the incoming administration either, by the way, folks. Let's see what sort of moron they bring in as the Attorney General. What sort of deal cutter they bring in. Clemente's lawyers, James Jim Lessar, contends that the FBI continues to sit on documents for which it had effectively waived privacy protections. Clemente wants access to records because of her decade-long investigation into the deaths of young women in Ohio and a purported sex trafficking ring that brought underage girls to and from Palm Beach, Florida. Well, it makes sense, right? Why wouldn't she want to have this information considering Epstein's ties to both areas? Coming from Palm Beach into Ohio? Oh, I wonder why he'd be going into the fiefdom of Ohio, Mr. Les Wexner's kingdom. These people are all sick, folks, and I don't put anything by them. Are we going to just say that they weren't involved in anything like this? Who the hell knows? Honestly, when I first started researching this case, I would have never believed anything like that. I'd have been like, yeah, right. But my eyes have been so wide open since we've started diving into these articles the way we have every single day since October 1st of 2019, by the way. My eyes have been open, my opinion has been changed, and I am no longer asleep at the wheel, folks. I see exactly what these people are up to now. The curtain has been pulled back, and once you get a little peek, you can never go back to not knowing what these disgusting bipedal serpents are doing right under our noses. That's where Epstein resided before his 2008 plea agreement to state charges in Florida, in which he agreed to be an FBI informant. Ohio is where Leslie Wexner, the founder of the L Brands empire, lives and where a key chapter of Epstein's rise to fortune happened. Well, that's interesting. Let's read that again. That's where Epstein resided before his 2008 plea agreements to state charges in Florida, in which he agreed to be an FBI informant. Did the Miami Herald really just call him an asset of the government right here? Haven't we been saying that he's an asset from the very beginning and getting pushback? But now the Miami Herald is admitting, oh, well, it was an FBI informant. Yeah, how about a CIA Mossad asset, my friends? And we all know where I stand on that. The CIA is the absolute worst when it comes to shit like this. If anybody thinks this was like a Mossad operation going on in America and the CIA wasn't aware of what was going on, well, you're being very naive. The CIA knows everything that's going on in this country, especially covertly. And this has all the hallmarks of a CIA-sponsored operation. Maybe not run by the CIA, but sponsored by the CIA for sure. Logistics, protection, etc. No public documents tie either Wexner or Epstein to the missing girls, but Clemente alleges that state and federal officials in Ohio have failed to properly investigate the murders. At least one of Epstein's accusers has told authorities she was abused in Ohio. So look, folks, Angela Clemente is onto something here. Who knows what it's going to provide, right? Who knows what sort of information it's going to provide? But she's on the right path here, and I think that hitting the FBI with the Freedom of Information Act is glorious. I love when a judge admonishes the FBI. I love when a judge stands with an ordinary citizen against the megalithic organization of the Federal Bureau of Investigations. It would be nice if more judges had that kind of courage. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All of the links that go with this episode can be found in the description box. And to all of you who have donated to the podcast, thank you very much. I appreciate all of you. All right, everybody, we'll be back later on.